Hey y'all, thanks for tuning into another episode of the Peace Podcast. I don't know where you are, but here we are getting like a foot of snow. It's freezing in-house and out. So hopefully you're staying warm in this winter weather. If you're not living here, then hopefully your weather is beautiful and not like this. I love the snow, but my goodness, it's freezing. So today's episode is about letting go of the emotional burden of other people. And if you listened to the pod last week, you know that I talked about how sometimes we can try to finagle the world around us so that it becomes less of a threat to us, and that we learned that in our family systems. And we can do the same thing with people's emotions, especially if we learn the strategies of codependency whenever we were growing up. And the strategies of codependency really just look like feeling as if you are responsible for someone else's emotional state. And the underlying intent of that responsibility is you wanting to keep yourself safe from anything that may be deemed a threat, which is the same thing we talked about last week. So, we talked about, maybe doing the dishes or making sure that everything is in its place and making sure that people don't have a reason to be upset. Well, this is, they walked in upset. They've dealt with struggles or stress at work, and now we've taken on the responsibility of calming their emotional state in an effort to be in a peaceful state ourselves. And what it turns into in adulthood is, I can't feel happy, safe, at peace, in a good place unless the people around me are happy, safe, peaceful, in a good place. And what that does for you is create a space of emotional instability, because if your emotional state hinges off of the emotional state of everyone around you, then you're never at a calm place. Because the way that it looks in a healthy circumstance is that you are able to regulate your emotions internally regardless of what's going on externally. So if your child is frustrated, you don't get frustrated because their frustration doesn't cause frustration in you. If your spouse is downtrodden because they had a bad day, you can be empathetic to them, but that doesn't bleed onto you. You don't adapt or adopt the emotional strain that they're experiencing because you are not operating from a space of codependency. But when you feel like you're responsible for other people's emotions, even at the cost of your own peace, when you grew up in a system where if you were happy when your mom was frustrated, then that was deemed as disrespectful or not compassionate or not empathetic, then when you get into adulthood, you have this hyper responsibility where you feel like you have to control the emotions around you because you're not allowed to feel anything peaceful, good, calm, because the people around you are experiencing something that is not that. And so a lot of women experience this because when we're children, we're taught that we're responsible for everyone else. We're responsible for being caretakers. We're responsible for ensuring that everybody's lives are strategized, etc. And that can create a sense of needing to be liked by your children, needing to be seen in a positive light by your children, and needing your children to be happy. And when we get into a space as women where we need everyone around us to be happy, one, it prevents those people from carrying the burden of their own emotions. But two, it also teaches them to be just as codependent as we are, because it tells them it's not safe to feel anything other than those positive emotions, because mom doesn't know how to allow me to feel those positive or those negative emotions. She only allows the positive ones. So they either start to stuff the what are considered negative ones, even though I don't believe that any emotions are negative. I believe that they just all exist. Even anger has its space. Yes, be slow to anger, but there's still spaces where you should be angry, and that anger can propel you to do something positive. It's the way that we react to the anger that sometimes can have a negative effect. And so then we teach our children and our spouse and all the people around us that they're not allowed to feel emotions other than the happy and the joy and the, excited emotions. And they start to stuff or feel like they can't have emotions beyond those. And that's exactly how someone who is codependent was treated when they were a child. But also they took it a step further and they made it so that they needed to be responsible for everyone else's emotions around them in order to keep themselves safe. So emotional hyper responsibility is learned as a survival strategy. And it is saying, if I can keep everybody else's emotions in a positive place, then mine can be there too. But if other people are mad, if other people are sad, if other people are, frustrated, then I'm going to take on the responsibility of getting them out of that because their emotion is contagious to me. But that overfunctioning can trigger, again, just like last week's pod, the more you are overfunctioning on someone else's emotions, the less they have to function in their own, which family systems theory talks all about this. Because the thing is, if you are so busy trying to make, and I'm using kids as an example, but this absolutely can happen with friends, spouses, anybody else. But if you are trying to make sure that your kids are happy all the time, and you're over functioning to ensure that their happiness exists, then they're not going to know how to regulate their emotions when they're feeling anything other than that. And let's face it, when you go out into the real world, you're going to feel emotions that are not just happiness. So if you're not there when they get frustrated at school because some kid at school keeps stealing the soccer ball from them during recess, or if you're not there when some little girl makes a horrible comment to your daughter, like, they're not going to know how to regulate their own emotions because you aren't allowing them to have those emotions in your space, because you feel safe and you feel more comfortable when everybody is happy. But that doesn't create a sense of calm in them because you're over functioning for them, and that's allowing them to underfunction. In fact, this is where you'll get your people around you will literally make you their punching bag, because you're so easily accepting of, I guess not accepting, but you're so easy to, or quick to try to regulate their emotions, that they'll lash out on you because they know that you're going to try to make everything okay. And because their emotions are contagious to you, you try to do that really quickly because you don't want to feel sad when they're sad. You don't want to feel frustrated when they're frustrated. So you try to get their emotions to a state of joy so that you can then experience joy. But carrying other people's emotions will just leave you in a chronic state of stress. You will have confusion with your identity because you won't even know how you actually feel about something because you're too busy being hyper vigilant looking for the emotions in the room. Well, if he's frustrated about this, then I'm frustrated about this. If he's sad about this, then I need to be sad about this. Or conversely, frustrated, sad, whatever emotions you see around you, you work yourself into a tizzy trying to regulate their emotions. So you're trying to overcompensate, you're trying to tell jokes to create laughter, you're trying to sweep the issue under the rug or even solve it for them so that their emotions don't bleed onto you and create a space of threat to you. The way that we have to operate as humans is to set emotional boundaries, because that will, one, strengthen the relationship rather than harming it. It will not make you responsible for creating a happy place for everybody. And so then they will stop dumping on you. But two, it will allow for you to feel more like yourself, and to create that feeling of homeostasis inside of you. Because if you are affected, if your emotional state is affected by everybody else's emotional state, imagine how many people you come in contact with in a day. If everything that you feel is affected by what they feel, then you're going to be a mess. But the way to fix that is not to go around trying to create happiness in everybody, even though it's a beautiful thing to want the people around you to be happy. But sometimes they're just not. Sometimes they're just experiencing something and they may not be happy. Instead of going around trying to make everybody around you happy, it is better to be able to sit with them in their emotions, but not receive those emotions as your own. So the boundary can be, I'm not going to be your punching bag. I can't always make you happy. I'm not responsible for your emotional state, but I can support you in what you're going through so that those emotions aren't dysregulated in you and you have somebody to lean on. But I'm not responsible for taking away that emotion, because we can overcarry the burden because we're afraid that they're going to leave, because we're afraid that they're going to perceive us differently, because we're afraid that we're going to be in a state of chaos if we don't carry that emotional burden. But the freedom for us comes when you are able to hold space for other people's emotions, but also not feel like you need to take them on and carry them. My spouse is sad and I can sit with them while they're sad, but I don't have to be sad too. My spouse is frustrated, depressed, anxious, and I can sit with them and I can pray over them, but I can also allow them to have that emotion and not let it bleed onto me. But when we become these people whose emotions are created by other people, or who become so responsible for everyone's emotions, then our emotions become all over the place, because no matter how well we know how to regulate our emotions, if they don't know how to regulate theirs and we're absorbing them, then we're going to feel all the emotions that they feel too. You don't have to carry that because it's not your burden to carry. You know, I tell this story often, but it was a very pivotal moment in one of my toxic relationships, and I was in a couple of them. And I felt the heavy burden of emotional labor in this relationship, to the point where even though I saw why it was happening, I still felt the responsibility because this person had taken a hands-off approach. And so I talk about how one of my exes had lost his job, and I was trying to encourage him not to just take on any job, but to take a job that was actually going to produce longevity, because he didn't want to be in the same situation 3 months from now because he just took any job and he worked for any person, even though he didn't feel in alignment with the company or the person, or he knew that it was a personality conflict or whatever the case was. And so I was like, yeah, I get it that you're not making money right now and you need something to make money. And so yes, there are some options that you have there. But I wouldn't if it were me, I wouldn't ink my name to a contract if I knew that that was going to be something that was not going to be lasting, because now you have to put that on your resume and it's a whole thing. So during the time where he was looking for jobs and I was actively searching for jobs for him, which is another thing that I shouldn't have been responsible for, there was a point in this space where he felt unsupported by his family, unsupported by his siblings, his mom, unsupported by, his children actually being cognizant of what's going on, because they were like teenagers, and they still had expectations but also needs at the same time, and he wasn't meeting those. But then also, no matter what I did, he felt unsupported by me. And so when we had one of the conversations out of many where he was experiencing an emotional reaction to the situation that he was in, and this was like the straw that broke the camel's back, because it was months of, first we had only been together for 9 months when this happened, so it was a very heavy strain on a new relationship, but also it was months before he actually found a job, so that was a whole nother part of this. And so we've been enduring this for months, and he was feeling down and frustrated or whatever, and I was trying to be like, okay, well, let's think of like some practical steps that we can take so that you aren't sitting in this space where you're starting to feel depressed, because that's going to just make this a longer process. And that conversation was kind of long, but in a nutshell, he and I had addressed his emotions. If I had not addressed his emotions, I would have said later in retrospect, like, yeah, maybe if I would have like sat with his emotions first and then done this, he wouldn't have reacted this way. But I know that I sat with his emotions, but also like it was at the point where I was like, okay, we've sat with your emotions for a long time. Now we got to get active here. Like, you can't just do nothing and expect the situation to change. And so he said something to me to the effect of, well, you would think that you would know that when your partner feels this way, frustrated because their situation is this way, that you would feel instinctually the need to tell them all the good things about themselves. So to tell them how worthy they are and like all of these things. And first of all, I was like, how am I supposed to know that if you've never communicated that? But second of all, I had a hunch that the reason he needed that from me is because he wasn't getting it from his mom, and he wasn't getting it from his sisters, and he wasn't giving it to himself. So he was making me responsible for his own emotional state. And again, there's more to that conversation, but basically he handed the burden off to me. It wasn't even me grabbing the burden. It was him handing his emotional burden onto me, basically saying, I'm holding you responsible for me feeling better about this situation. Now, the Carrie of old probably would have, and even in the beginning of our relationship, I did this, probably would have like spun wheels to try to tell him all the things that he needed to hear. But I had already done that and it didn't work. So it was like, this is not actually what you need. What you need is for it to come from these other people that you're not getting support from. And there's no way that I, one person, can give you what you need from all of these people, nor is it my responsibility. So I set a boundary there and I said, I'm sorry that you're going through what you're going through. And I understand that you need a lot of support in this space. I feel like I've done a lot during this period of time to help you emotionally, but also to help you actively look for employment. I'm only one person. I can only do so much, and I can't fix this situation for you. Therefore, I cannot fix your emotions if your emotions are attached to the situation. And I refuse to carry that burden for him, even though he assigned it to me. And in the past, I would have overfunctioned for him. But I consciously said, you know what? This is not me. This is not something that I need to do for you. I can be supportive, but I can't take on your full emotional burden, because what you're assigning to me actually belongs to all these other people around you. And because you're not getting the support that you want from your mom, and the support that you want from your family, and the support that you want from your kids, which also I felt, side note, was high expectations because he wasn't doing the work to emotionally regulate himself, then now this expectation is placed on me and I can't do it. There's not enough of me to be able to do that for you. So the peace came when I left the relationship, because at that point I just felt like he's not emotionally mature enough to be in a relationship, let alone go through this experience while he's in a relationship, because he places all his emotional burdens on other people. I was proud of myself for that, because in the past I would have just spun my wheels and taken it over and been like over functioning in that space. And I would have driven myself crazy to the point where then I would have been exhausted. I would have been sad. I would have felt depressed, because honestly, I wasn't getting back very much from him, because he held it under the umbrella of, but I'm going through this. So I'm not going to give you very much because I'm going through this, but I'm going to expect a lot of you because I need more from you, even though really he needed it from everybody around him. So I tell you that story because there is a shift that happens when you realize that you also have to take care of your own emotions. And if you are so busy absorbing other people's emotions and trying to regulate other people's emotions, there is no way that you're going to be able to function in a healthy emotional space. You are not responsible for the emotions of people around you. You cannot overdo joy and happiness and excitement and jokes and laughter and all of these things to wipe away their emotional state. Because at the end of the day, where they are emotionally is circumstantially things that have happened to them, but also their responsibility to hold. And the only thing you can do is support. You can't snowplow their lives. You can't take away any of the external circumstances, because inside of those circumstances is an opportunity for growth, and it is not your responsibility to curate a life where people only have the emotions of joy and happiness. And so, practical application for this is just one thing, because I don't want you to try to do this complete overhaul, because that never works. Like that story that I told you, it was just that one time where I said, you know what, this is not mine to carry. I can support you, but I'm not responsible for your entire emotional existence. So think about one person whose emotions you typically overfunction for. And when you're in real time with that person, going through an experience with them, think about an area where you can consciously step back, take an aerial view, and think about how you can hand that back over during the interaction, set an emotional boundary, tell them that you're there for them, but that you're not able to just wipe this clean for them. Happy to support them, happy to pray over them, but can't fix their emotional state, and then observe what happens. Because what you'll notice is you'll start to see the people who over expect from you, and you'll also start to see who God is trying to weed out or force you to create a boundary with, because their sickness is making you sick. And God does not require of us to become sick because the people around us are sick. He requires of us to support them. He requires of us to be loving toward them, but he does not require of us to give them full access to our entire existence so that they can then in turn make us sick too. You are not responsible for the emotions of other people. It is not going to make you safer if you curate a life where they don't have to have any of those other emotions. In fact, it's going to make you sicker. It's going to make you more stressed out. It's going to make you less regulated for the other people around you. You don't have to carry everyone's emotions to be deemed as loving or to be perceived as loving. And my hope is that this message resonates with you and helps you to release the burden of that emotional hyper responsibility so that you can reclaim your peace. Start with that one small step so that you can live a life that is free of the burden of being responsible for other people's emotions, even if you experience that in childhood. I hope this video resonated with you. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Go follow me on all the socials and share this message with somebody that you feel like it would resonate with, because you never know just the message they need to break free from the bondage they're experiencing and to help them surrender the things that they need to surrender so that they may live a life of freedom. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time.